In 1990, ABC aired a two-part miniseries of Stephen King's It. In 2017 and 2019, full-length movie adaptations were made. Also in 2017, Simpsons comics tried their hand at the story. And finally, in 2022, the Simpsons TV series did its own full-length episode parody. I'm seeing double! 8 Pennywises! Hey, considering the original book is over 1,000 pages long, I think it's appropriate we've seen a bunch of takes on this story. There's a lot of stuff in there. Besides, as I'd covered last year, this isn't the first time the Simpsons TV series covered the same ground as their comics. Clearly something was in the air during Halloween 2022. So let's look at these two It parodies. How different could these evil, crusty stories be? Did one turn out better than the other? Fundamentally, which of these is the superior Stephen King adaptation? First, I'm going to give you the quick and dirty overview of Stephen King's It. You might know most of this due to cultural osmosis, but we need to establish our baseline. Warning, there will be spoilers, since The Simpsons goes through most of the plot. Okay, so It is set in Derry, Maine, where a series of deaths and disappearances have been occurring. Pennywise the clown in the sewer, you all know this part. The story follows 7 protagonists in the Losers Club: Bill, Beverly, Ben, Eddie, Richie, Stan, and Mike. They are tormented by these bullies, who are the biggest assholes ever. They are also tormented by Pennywise, who is a spooky clown asshole. Ben wrote a love poem to Beverly, she is unsure who wrote it, and falls for Bill. Love triangle. Anyway, the group talks about their visions of the evil clown, track him down to the sewers, and beat the shit out of him. They make a pact that if it returns, they will come back to Derry and finish the job. 27 years later, Mike notifies everyone that it is back and killing again. Almost all of them return to finish off Pennywise for good. Each of them confront their traumatic issues from their past, they find Pennywise's lair in the sewers, and beat the shit out of him again. There's obviously a bunch of Pennywise tormenting and attacking them along the way, and how exactly they defeat him changes from version to version, but that's the general outline for our purposes today. Hey, if you want to hear the whole thing, go listen to the 48-hour audiobook. Now, when it comes to doing a Simpsons parody, obviously you already have some core elements in common. Casting Krusty as Pennywise is the easiest slam dunk in the world. It was almost too obvious an idea to do, which is probably why they held off for so long. In addition, casting the Losers Club characters is fairly easy. We've had young Homer and his friends in flashbacks so many times by now, even in other Stephen King homages. In addition, the Simpsons cast of adults has basically only one female character it really cares about, just like in It. Good job, Marge and Beverly. Also, gee, I wonder which of Homer's friends will be cast in the role of Mike. Will it be Lenny? We shall find out soon. Let's start out by looking at the comics version, and then working our way to TV. Both of these hit similar plot beats, but veer off in radically different directions. For example, Simpsons Comics completely gets rid of the teen bullies. It opens with a screw the audience joke, where the kids are called losers, and then it's revealed that the teachers are bullying them at a homophobic carnival. It's an interesting choice, changing this dynamic to adults. It references the teen bullies, but also touches on the adults of Derry, Maine, who actively participate in abusive behavior or tacitly ignores it. The comic kinda merges the two themes in one fell swoop. Anyway, Barney wanders off to get a root beer float, trips, and it lands in the gutter. Here, Krusty mysteriously appears, telling him that everything's afloat down here. Okay, that's pretty damn clever, love this. Making a character named Georgie into Barney, then turning his love of beer into underage root beer floats, getting the classic "they float" reference in there. Well done, no notes, see ya Barney. Also, I gotta say, I love this reference to Poltergeist and this caricature of Dustin from Stranger Things. Man, if they had only drawn Finn Wolfhard instead, it would have really tied everything together. The kids reveal that they had seen the creepy clown. We also discover that Skinner has joined their group, since with Barney's death, they have a vacancy. This is a different dynamic than the book, as Georgie was Bill's younger brother and never part of the Losers Club. Personality-wise, none of the Simpsons kids are direct references to the kids from It. Except for maybe Skinner, who might be the Eddie analog with all their mommy issues. Marge draws the clown on a piece of paper, who suddenly comes to life and attacks them until Homer thinks to rip it up. Also, Krusty belches right here, which I think is a reference to one of the bullies. Not sure on this point, it's kind of a Barney reference too. Afterward, Krusty, much like Pennywise, torments each of the kids by attacking their deepest fears. Cigarettes, foot rubs, Homer's adulthood, Alf is cancelled. None of these scares mirror anything that happened in It, but they follow the general logic and themes. This Homer drawing is especially amazing. Marge, back from the library, describes how the monster uses their fears against them and can make whatever they imagine real. Marge is effectively taking on both the Ben and Mike roles from the book, doing all the historical research and figuring out how to deal with the monster. You would expect that they would head down to the Springfield sewers to confront Krusty, but for some reason, the comic sets the final battle at Springfield Elementary. I don't really get this choice, other than doing a joke about Skinner. Also, bye Skinner, it was nice knowing you. Huh, his death happened earlier than I expected. The comic takes a much different approach for this battle. Instead of Pennywise attacking the kids psychologically with their trauma, the kids use their imagination against him. Here come the Smurfs, a burger mascot, Knight Rider. Obviously, the kids' battle with Pennywise do not go like this at all, as much as I wish it had. But it does sort of align with the final battle in It Chapter 2 and how they weaponize fear against him. You'd think that we still have to do this a second time in the comic, except with adult Homer and Marge, but you'd be wrong. It takes a total left turn away from the book. Krusty returns 30 years later for revenge, but everybody is too busy and jaded to be afraid of him. Homer, Lenny, and Carl hate their job, Marge is frustrated with her laundry, even the kids are too busy with their iPad and TV to pay attention to him. This is suddenly turning into one of those tiresome boomer comics. But it's not an It parody without a giant spider monster, so Krusty attacks the Lard Lad Donut's unveiling. It does not go well. You know, Hans Moleman dropping a statue on the clown spider is just like slingshotting a silver earring at it. And then they finish with a Spider-Man reference. Somewhere in one of the Spider-Verses, there is a Pennywise Spider-Man swinging about. All in all, it's clear that the Simpsons comics did a loose Stephen King adaptation. They hit some of the main themes and plot points, but didn't go for the scene-by-scene parody. That's the problem with having only 20 pages to work with, instead of 20 minutes of airtime. If you want the plot of It, might I suggest the TV version from season 34. So, right out the gate, we can see that Not It is way more literal with its imagery. Now Barney's in the iconic yellow raincoat, floating his little boat in the street, just like Georgie. And, just like all the adaptations, there's an evil clown in the gutter. I love how the kill is portrayed here. The comic cut away to Homer, but this time they totally recreate the shot from the 2017 movie. This episode is rated TV-14. Next, Homer hangs up Barney's missing child poster amongst the dozens of others. Then he is confronted by a group of bullies led by super intense kid Chalmers with Skinner and Largo in tow. Pretty weird casting, to be honest. Clearly Chalmers had a much darker childhood than I would have expected. Once again, they're hitting those plot beats from It. How Chalmers threatens him with a knife, how Homer kicks him and rolls over the hill to escape, then how the Losers Club shows up and defeats them with rocks. Also, for some reason, Marge's softball pitch? Not sure where this came from. You notice that the Losers Club lineup has changed a bit. Last time, we got Homer, Marge, Lenny, Carl, and Skinner. This time, they swap out Lenny and Skinner for Comic Book Guy and Moe. It's the rare Carl without Lenny story, the scariest of them all. Instead, Lenny is gay for Moleman. Anyway, here's where the kids reveal that they all saw the evil clown. This time, we cut away to individual flashbacks. For Marge, they do the iconic Beverly bathroom scene. Except instead of painting the walls with blood, Crusto nearly drowns her in seltzer water. Moe was attacked by an evil ventriloquist dummy, which I think is a new invention. Same with Carl's octopus on the ceiling. And Comic Book Guys is too gross to see, so we'll just call that a reference to the horror genre in general. After a trip to the library, Marge discovers the truth about Crusto. Every 27 years, he would appear with a new show, except he would never be funny. Crusto emerges from TV, and Homer stops him by unplugging it. The gang arms themselves with various late 80s, early 90s kitsch, and goes to the abandoned Channel 14 studio to confront Crusto. Eventually, Crusto ends up slipping on marbles, hurting himself, and gets a huge laugh from the kids. They manipulate him into basically defeating himself, and when he realizes he was tricked, he vows to return to kill them all. The kids make a similar vow to return to finish the job. There is one major addition to this first half that wasn't in the comic, in that they really lean into the love triangle, arguably even more than the source material. Similar to Ben, Homer also writes a love poem in the library. Except unlike Beverly, who wasn't sure who wrote it, Comic Book Guy finds it and deliberately signs his name. The initial result is kinda similar to the 2017 film in how Beverly kisses Bill and Marge kisses Comic Book Guy. However, 27 years later, The Simpsons takes things one step further, that Marge ended up marrying Comic Book Guy and had Bizarro Bart and Lisa with him. Beverly and Bill do not marry in the original story. All 7 of the losers go off in separate directions. We see some of that here with Carl and Moe's successful careers and with Homer stuck back at home running a bar. To be honest, not a whole lot actually happens in the adult section of Not It. There's Homer summoning everyone to return, more love triangle drama, and Bart and Lisa getting kidnapped by Crusto. This element does tie in to the Stephen King source material, as Pennywise does kidnap a loved one in the 1990 version. Anyway, let's get to the final showdown. At Channel 14, we discover that all of the dead children have become a captive audience for Crusto's show, that this was his motivation for killing them. He has a laughter sign that seems to be controlling it all, so they need to destroy it. Crusto, much like Pennywise, attacks them with their adult fears and insecurities. Student loans, prostate exams, Twitter. Also, Crusto reveals that Comic Book Guy lied about the love poem. In the end, Homer quotes the poem to Marge, she throws a rock and destroys the sign, thereby ruining the source of Crusto's power. And Comic Book Guy sacrifices himself for Marge. Much like the Stephen King original, they close things out by riding their bikes and giving us our final moral about our fears. Look forward to a Tommyknockers parody next time. To be honest, I'm surprised by how different the Simpsons comics and TV versions were. Sure, they executed some of the plot points in the exact same way, like they both gave Barney the Georgie death and had Marge do all the research and evil clown exposition. This scene happens in both, even referencing different adaptations. But each Simpsons recreation has totally different goals, its own interpretation of what a good It adaptation should be. If we're asking which version adapted Stephen King more faithfully, I don't think there's a debate. It's the TV version. This one is definitely more of an homage than a parody. This is the version that was committed to telling the story of It, taking its general plot structure and filming it through that Simpsons lens. It had an advantage over the comics in that it had 2 recent films that it could directly reference and recreate its iconic moments. If you're looking for the plot beat specifically, this is the parody for you. However, when it comes to the individual characters, that's where they changed things up and went with the cast they already had. Like obviously, Marge is the Beverly of the story, and I guess Moe is the Richie with his career in entertainment. They make a joke suggesting that Carl is the Mike of the group, but functionally, he isn't like Mike at all. Instead, Homer is a weird amalgamation of Ben, Mike, and Eddie. He writes the poem like Ben and gets the girl in the end, but he's also the Mike in the sense that he never moved away and summons everyone. But he's also the Eddie because he's a virgin and is extremely awkward about it, just like the 1990 Eddie, but not the 2019 Eddie. You'd think Comic Book Guy's heavier build makes him the Ben of the story, but he kinda becomes Bill and then sorta turns into Beverly's abusive husband, but he gets chomped on like Eddie. Geez, all the characters are blending together so much, it's like Marge is sleeping with all these guys. The weird thing about the TV version is that, despite hitting the plot beats and key imagery, it totally sidesteps the references you'd most expect. You see an It parody and are waiting for the classic "they all float down here" reference. Say the line, Crusto. Or you're watching an It parody and are waiting for the giant spider battle at the end, which they also decide not to do. Marge throws a rock at him, kinda like the slingshot thing, but that's all you're gonna get. Simpsons Comics, on the other hand, views these elements as essential. We gotta figure out a way to do the everything floats reference. We gotta finish with the big spider. They are 100% mandatory. But the comic doesn't care much about the other details. We don't need the love poem, we don't need the rock fight, don't need the sewers. Hell, we don't even really need the adult half of the story. Get out of here. That being said, I would argue that the comic plays around with the general concept of Pennywise more than the TV version. With Crusto, there's more of Krusty's base character in there, this pathetic entertainer. That's his motivation. Crusto is like the character-driven interpretation of Pennywise, whereas the comic is the more unworldly and psychological interpretation. This Krusty behaves more like a force of nature that feeds on fears and anxieties. But they invert these ideas too, showing the kids using their imagination to go on offense, showing how Krusty's tactics don't work on these jaded adults. See, even as an evil monster, Krusty is still his depressed and pathetic self. Now, I still think the spider fight in the comic is really stupid, but then again, I think the spider in it is also pretty stupid. And at least they did the spider, come on. It's weird, even though the TV version is easily the more faithful Stephen King adaptation, I actually like the Simpsons comic version more. Now, part of this is for a shady reason, as I am one of those people who hates the adult half of it. When the comic decided to throw all that stuff out, I was like, hooray, you fixed it. Personally, I feel like it starts out really strong, but loses so much momentum in the second half. There's this sense of, we've done this already, and I'm just waiting around for the final battle. It is like the Bravely Default of scary movies. To the Simpsons' credit, this bizarro Bart and Lisa stuff is a fun take on them, and almost redeems this part of the story for me. I get why they wanted to lean into this love triangle more with Homer and Marge. At the same time, this isn't really what I want out of an It parody. I want a bunch of creepy scenes and atmosphere. I want a sense of danger. Or I want campy Tim Curry stuff and red balloons. I find Not It to be surprisingly sterile in its presentation. It's neither silly and campy like the 90s version, nor grim and foreboding like the 2010s version. To be honest, I didn't find either version of It to be all that scary in general. Clearly watching Pee-wee's Big Adventure as a child desensitized me to scary clowns. But in this season 34 episode, I barely felt any sense of horror or dread at all. It left me relatively cold. This final showdown is so limp and lifeless. Fundamentally, I think It is difficult to do a comedic adaptation for. The core of its story is not exactly fun, you know? You're often gonna get a more frivolous and surface level take on the characters to keep the tone from being too oppressive. And the structure of It, with the kid half and the adult half, is tricky to manage narratively. You have to take an already awkward plot structure and put the Simpsons spin on it without making it a disjointed mess. It's a tall order. That's why I prefer the Simpsons comic version overall. I think It is better suited to a sillier, conceptual adaptation than something more narrative-driven. Simpsons comics were like, here's the core concept, here's a couple plot points, we're gonna go cuckoo bananas with it. Why do a second showdown with Homer and Marge when we can do this Spider-Man joke? It's stupid, but it's stupid in an interesting way. And in my opinion, that's what the ending of It is all about. At the end of the day, this is a contest between a parody and an homage, and this time, I prefer the parody. The Simpsons comics version is better. Let me know in the comments which of these two evil Krusty stories you like more, and what you think of It adaptations in general. I would rank them It Chapter 1, the 1990s miniseries, and then It Chapter 2. Still haven't read the book. Also, let me know if there were any other big references that I missed between the miniseries or the movies, or if I was too mean to the adult half of the story. Bill Hader was really good though. Hope everyone has a spooky and safe Halloween. Thanks for watching.